Content note: this video contains discussions of cultural appropriation and racism, specifically anti-black racism, as well as mentions dieting and unattainable beauty standards. Please proceed with caution. So before I start this video, let me ask you a question. Do you think Kendall Jenner cutting a cucumber this way was done on purpose to create free publicity for the Kardashians' new self-titled show, or do you actually think she's never cut a cucumber before? Let me know what you think in the comments below because we will be circling back to this, but first, let's take a trip back in time. Before I start, I want to make it clear that none of what I'll be saying here is new information or things that haven't been said for years now by Black creators and artists. The mainstreaming of Black culture that has exploded since the early 2000s has been brought to attention by actors like Amanda Stenberg and video essayists like Khadija Bowe, Kimberly Nicole Foster, founder of For Harriet, and Crystal Alejandro, founder of Black Femininity TV. I want to give a shout out to Khadija Bowe for their videos about why they don't keep up with the Kardashians and about the rise of the slim thick influencer. And I especially want to give a shout out to Kimberly Nicole Foster, founder of For Harriet, for their recent video about why Kim and Khloe Kardashian are turning away from the Black male gaze. I'm a huge fan of Kimberly's work, and if you haven't seen that video yet, go do so. Lastly, go check out Black Femininity TV's video entitled The Kardashian-Jenners' History of Ripping Off Black Women and Their Negative Impact on Society. These are just some of the sources I used in order to learn more about the Kardashians, so I highly suggest that you go to the description of this video to see more about what shaped this essay. So before we talk about the Kardashians, I think it's important to talk about the mainstreaming of Black American culture into white American culture in recent decades, because that's a huge reason why the Kardashians ended up becoming so famous. The term Black culture encompasses music, fashion, art, language, geography, food, etc., but generally speaking, the mainstreaming of Black culture is a product of capitalism, in that it takes marketable aspects of said culture and sells it to white people, without crediting and sometimes outright stealing from Black people who created those artifacts due to various unique lived experiences as Black people living in the US. You can see this in the athleisure trend and various other streetwear trends, the way AAVE trickles down into white circles while totally losing its initial meaning, white dancers on TikTok becoming more famous and getting more money than Black creators of those dances, and with white artists seeing the popularity of Black genres such as R&B and hip-hop and jumping on the bandwagon to make even more money than the originators of those genres. In Amanda Stenberg's 2015 video, Don't Cash Crop on My Cornrows, they talk about the long history of cultural appropriation by white artists and celebrities since the early 2000s. For example, they talk about how high fashion brands like Alexander McQueen and Marchesa in 2014 both styled braids on their white models, and suddenly overnight, the hairstyles that Black people have been wearing throughout history and have been punished for were seen as elegant and beautiful. And when the mainstream backlash against cultural appropriation finally came to the forefront in, I'd say, around 2015, white people weren't having it because to them, they were living in a post-racial America. Pre-2015, the white mainstream idea was that we don't see color, which led to a lot of cultural exchanges being one-sided in that white people saw a thing from another culture, thought it was cool, and decided to wear it themselves because in the end, we're all people celebrating one another, right? We're one race, the human race. Can we all just get along without actually understanding what those artifacts mean, doing their own research about their significance, and listening to people from those cultures? And during this time, any racial discourse or even attempts at racial discourse were immediately laughed at or shut down. For example, during Hurricane Katrina, Kanye West called out President Bush for being racist, and was seen as an unhinged celebrity to be mocked, rather than as someone who actually made a good point about how the lack of aid during that crisis was clearly racialized. The mainstream media painting Kanye's concern as a joke was all done on purpose to avoid the race question. On the flip side, people loved Kanye's sound and his music at the time, which was about race and racial struggle. White people liked his aesthetics, but didn't get the substance. White people were dancing to Watch Me, doing the nay-nay, whipping their hair back and forth. 2 white girls went viral for singing super bass, while police brutality and racial violence was still happening in the US. White people were ready to consume Black culture, but not ready to talk about how white violence and complacency helped to create what they said they loved so much. But then in 2015 and 2016, the conversation about race and appropriation could no longer be ignored, and Black artists and creators addressed these issues head-on, online, and in the streets. Franchesca Ramsey's Decoded came out around this time, Amanda Stenberg's video went viral, as well as Jesse Williams' acceptance speech at the BET Awards in 2016. Ramsey and Stenberg in particular faced a lot of backlash for their videos. Ramsey especially got harassed to no end with no help from YouTube. It was all really sickening to see, especially after years of white people seemingly appreciating Black culture only to turn on those same people. And since the mid-2010s reckoning with race, white and non-Black people are now more aware, generally, but that didn't mean Black aesthetics and trends left the mainstream. If anything, from 2015 to 2020, it has been a cultural mainstay in fashion in the way we talk, in the music we listen to, etc. For instance, in 2018, Prada's fall and winter collection was heavily inspired by hip-hop streetwear looks like bucket hats, oversized clothing, and sneakers, mostly donned by white models, of course. And even more prevalent, there has been this growing trend of various celebrities wanting to appear mixed or wanting to be Black by taking on a caricature of what non-Black people think Black people sound and act like. This was done, I think, to maybe sound more authentic when it comes to artists who are in spaces where they realize they're outsiders, like white musicians in Black musical genres, or to just seem cool and hip. But recently, as the dawn of a new decade shines across the horizon, there has been a de-Blackifying trend among white and non-Black celebrities. For example, Aquafina, who rose to prominence with their 2012 rap My Vag, has shed their affect to be taken more seriously. The same goes for Grande embracing her more natural skin tone and Miley Cyrus for ditching the grills and twerking for their more authentic country self. On TikTok, white girls who grew up with this mainstreaming of Black culture and looking up to white celebrities who don these Black personas have of course done the same thing. They took on the fashion trends from Black culture as well as affected AAV and rose to prominence dancing and lip-syncing to Black music, but are now looking back on themselves and cringing because that wasn't who they really were and was just a phase for them. So how does this have to do with the Kardashians? The Kardashians were basically the biggest opportunists and capitalists when it came to this mainstreaming of Black culture, and later through appropriation, popularized Black trends and fashion for white women, which is how we get the aforementioned average white girls on TikTok looking back at their ghetto phase. Kim, when she was younger, though petite, was never going to fit into the beauty standard that Paris Hilton upheld at the time. She's, like I said, petite and has natural curves. She's never really been super thin, so it would make sense, and I'm projecting here, for her to turn to a different sort of beauty ideal, to that of the video vixen. Khadijah describes the video vixen beauty ideal, or slim thick, as a body type that exists in real life, and as an ideal that was aimed at Black women specifically. The ideal being having an hourglass figure or an extreme pear-shaped body. This body type would also come with some natural fat, but in the right places. You can have some fat, you just can't be fat. Going back to Kim, she really embraced this sort of body type because it's what she naturally had, and she could enhance it, of course, as time went on. It's important to note, though, that the Kardashians' version of slim thick is not found in nature, as Khadijah points out. They have very little body fat, a thigh gap, and an overall slim figure besides their chest and hips, which is impossible to achieve without having at least some unflattering amounts of natural fat. Their hips in particular start at an unnatural place on their body due to the surgeries they've had. When it comes to the surgeries that the Kardashians have had, I recommend watching Lauryn Hill's channel. I know they're controversial, but we'll get to that later. Kim became known for her butt in the early 2000s, and though it was initially seen as an oddity, it later helped her acquire more fame and more money. She leaned in hard because it was lucrative for her, and she frankly didn't care that she was being praised and given credit for a body type that was seen as weird and fetishized on Black women, but praised on her and her sisters. And in general, her entire family leaned into their trashy reality TV status for a while and took advantage of the fact that people saw them and their physicalities and associated them with lowbrow media. Whether this was intentional or unintentional at first, it definitely became intentional later on as Black culture became a mainstay in mainstream white culture. But soon the family realized that leaning into roles commonly reserved for lower-class, racially marginalized people wasn't getting them anywhere, and Kim was even still banned from high fashion events like the Met Gala at this time. But then she started dating and later married Kanye West in 2012, and honestly, he changed her life forever. Because of him, she was invited to the Met Gala as his guest, and he began dressing her and became a sort of stylist to her. And I don't know how that power dynamic worked out. It was probably not very good, but Kanye gave Kim some really memorable looks which garnered a lot of publicity and connections, and then suddenly Kim and her family were being dressed by couture fashion houses like Balmain in collaboration with Kanye's brand Yeezy. West introduced Kardashian to fashion designer Riccardo Tisci, who dressed her when others wouldn't. I didn't care what people thought about Kim, he told Details in 2015. In the beginning, I met her because of my respect for Kanye. And then I liked her a lot and we became friends. Kanye also helped Kim stay ahead of the fashion game. During a 2018 episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Kim told her sister Kourtney and Jonathan Cheban that her husband convinced her to ditch the oversized sunnies. Kanye sent me a whole email like, "You cannot wear big glasses anymore. It's all about the tiny little glasses," she said. He sent me like millions of 90s photos with tiny little glasses. Kim, because of her relationship to Kanye, became a fashion icon, and so did the rest of her sisters. Not all of her looks during this time were good. There was a lot of appropriation going on by all of them. But rather than being called out by news outlets, they were being applauded as being avant-garde, artistic, and daring. And this reputation the sisters got for being fashion icons really helped them start to build their own fashion and beauty brands. When they were called out by black people for appropriation or just making huge missteps in general, they either gave half-assed notes-app apologies or even had the audacity to blame their kids. I'll never forget when Kim said that she wore braids because North liked seeing her in braids. That specifically rubbed me the wrong way because as an adult, you should know better. And as someone who was raised by people who didn't look like me, it really sucks when parents use their kids to get a pass on stuff that would otherwise be offensive. But using North in this way was strategic for Kim because she just wants to make North happy, thus making herself the victim and being able to dodge any real criticism. And it wasn't just the hair, there were the lip fillers and later whatever they did to their butts. This extreme slim, thick look became the standard of beauty for online influencers and then trickled down to the mainstream public until people have finally stopped investing in this look because they realized it's a fad. And in fact, the Kardashians as of late, just like those Cheeto white girls on TikTok, have divested from their black personas and fashion styles to become clean girls, going blonde, getting rid of their butts, trimming down, trying to liken themselves to Marilyn Monroe, etc. A recent photo shoot of Kim went viral for her brand Skims, and it's giving very Reagan-esque, unrestrained capitalism Hunger Game vibes. Very Melania Trump. People loved the photos, but all I saw was Kim finally embracing her capitalistic conservative values. Because in the end, the Kardashians are a politically conservative family. I don't care how they try to present themselves, they are in it for themselves and themselves only, and of course are continually rewarded by this economic system and know that. And you can see it in recent interviews where Kim and Kourtney unabashedly talk about how no one wants to work and that we work so hard and why can't people just work harder like us? Later, in a response to her "no one wants to work anymore" comments, she said they were taken out of context and tries to clarify that she has worked hard to get to where she is, while also not owning up to any of her privileges, even simply her financial privilege of being born into wealth and in the right social circles. When pressed about her role in setting unattainable beauty standards, she says that, "If I'm doing it, it's attainable. There are so many different beauty standards, whether it's Gwen Stefani, Jennifer Lopez, Marilyn Monroe. When I was a teenager, the look was just blonde waves. My mentality was never like, pick who you want to be. It was always be yourself, find beauty in everything." Which is easier said than done when you can make your body fit into any standard you want, and when your body is already celebrated. And ironically, at the end of the day, they don't really do their own work, but instead steal from black female-owned brands. In June of 2021, Khloe privately settled her Good American lawsuit out of court with Destiny Blue, founder of D Blue Dazzled, after she stole Destiny's designs for her own brand. And that's just one example of when the Kardashians ripped off black fashion designers and artists' looks for their own companies. There are tons more, and I suggest watching Black Femininity TV's video to find out more. I also really resent how Kris is always trying to show how humble her roots are when she's been a millionaire/billionaire for most of her life at this point. The Kardashians have stolen from black creatives, literally appropriated black bodily traits, but are now removing their body modifications in order to distance their physicalities from being associated with the same blackness that has made them famous. They know that to be taken more seriously, they can't present themselves in proximity to blackness, even though, again, that's how they got their fame. So let's go back to the cucumber question. Now that you know all of this about the Kardashians, how they're extreme opportunists who don't care about anyone but themselves, and how that strategy is continually rewarded under capitalism, do you think the cucumber cutting was staged or natural? For the longest time, I thought that it was totally natural, but when I brought it up to my close friends, they all laughed at me because to them, it was completely staged. Of course she's cut a cucumber before, or at least has seen one being cut. She's only cutting it like that so people talk more about the show, and so the audience continues to feel superior to them. Kendall not knowing how to cut a cucumber makes them feel less threatening as rich and powerful people. Just through Instagram alone, Kylie makes almost $1 million per sponsored post, while Kim makes around $850K per post. Kim also makes around $10,000 per sponsored tweet. It reminds me of how the entire premise of The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie was knocking them down a peg by making them do menial labor to show how dumb they were, while distracting us from the fact that they're heiresses with millions of dollars and are only doing this to garner more fame and money. This type of marketing of celebrities makes us also feel bad for them, and humanizes them because isn't it sad that they can't live normal lives, as if our normal lives are so great? And this isn't to say that they don't deserve grace and sympathy to a point, but celebrities are people too has its limits. If they are people, they should also be held accountable for their actions and maybe not sit upon and hoard billions of dollars holed up in their estates, traveling on private jets and yachts. Them being out of touch was funny for a while, at least to some people, and we're able to understand that being constantly in the public eye isn't easy. But come on, after the whole get back to work thing, I couldn't anymore. And that comment sparked a debate whether they only said that to make people talk about them more, because since the edit was so polarizing, they had to revisit it and make a public clarification, giving themselves even more publicity. But unlike the cucumber thing, I wholeheartedly believe that they think people are lazy, and if that we all just worked as hard as they did, we could all be rich. They know exactly what they're doing, whether it be cutting a cucumber or showing off a sink that they clearly don't use. There's one point in the new Kardashian show where Kendall says that she doesn't want people to judge her or the family, but you're making a reality show for the public to judge you. And maybe for the younger Kardashians it was different because they didn't have a say as children about the reality show, but now if they don't want to be in the public eye, they could just leave. And if they don't want to be judged at this point, they should just disappear. Kylie disappeared for the pregnancy and birth of her first child. Rob has been living a pretty private life for a while now. They have enough money to last 10 lifetimes at this point. So no, I don't feel sorry for judging them since they are purposefully and continually putting themselves out there for us to talk about them, when again, they can very much leave. I guess it should be no surprise at how much they remind me of Donald Trump, a fellow celebrity. When he was president, a lot of debates were made about if what he was saying was just because he wanted press, because there's no such thing as bad press, or if he truly believed in what he was saying. And it's frustrating because you never know when to take these celebrities seriously or not because everything is so simultaneously curated, but also meant to come out as authentic. Not to mention the Kardashians can always hide behind the benefit of the doubt. They can always say, we were just doing that for the show and don't really mean X, Y, or Z instead of owning up to whatever heinous thing they did or said. Some people will say, don't hate the player, hate the game. But when it comes to people like the Kardashians, I say hate both. Everything I know about them is against my will. So I did a poll on my Twitter and my YouTube channel to gauge what you all thought about the Kardashians. I wanted to see how many people had strong feelings about them, either for or against, but most people ended up being pretty ambivalent and just don't really give a shit about them. And honestly, I'm in that camp too, though I've watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians from time to time and remember as a kid distinctly knowing that Kendall and Kylie, who are around my age, would become hugely famous. I never followed them on social media and am only watching their newest reality show for this video. If anything, this comment that reads, "Everything I know about them is against my will," sums up most of my prior knowledge about them. I tried to ignore them, but it seems like every other day they're dominating my timeline whether I choose to follow them or not. It makes me wonder if they pay Twitter and other social media outlets to push them to the top of the For You page, and honestly, I wouldn't put it past them. There's so much money riding on their posts that it would make sense for sponsors to pay the platforms to push their ads so they get seen by as many people as possible, especially people who don't follow them. But even though most people ignore them, don't buy their products, or care about their lives and do their best to divest from them, they're still freaking here, and that's why in the end I'm making this video, because it's just so baffling to me that millions of people could care less about them, and yet they're still billionaires. And I know in the end this video is giving them more free publicity, but honestly, not giving them attention doesn't seem to be working either. I personally don't think if we all just ignore them or unfollow them that they'd ever really go away at this point. Additionally, they've received so much backlash and criticism, but again, like Donald Trump, they're Teflon. Nothing sticks to them. So in the end, what's the point? What's the point of calling them out on their bullshit if they just don't care or will continue to lie? Not just about their body modifications and surgeries, but also about stealing from brands. And this is the reason why I like Lauryn Hill's channel, because I think one way we can take power away from them is by demystifying them. I like knowing that what they look like is unattainable, because then it means I don't need to feel pressure to look like that because it's unnatural. But of course, they'll never admit to having any work done or have had any help or privilege to get to where they are, because as pure capitalists, they believe that they worked for everything they have and truly believe in this ideology that you get what you deserve. What I find really insidious is that they continue to uphold beauty standards that they clearly find constricting. They have to lose weight constantly, diet constantly, exercise constantly, and continually go under the knife and complain that the boxes for women are too small. And yet they work so hard to fit into that standard anyway. It's their lack of transparency or even reflection that they are rewarded for participating in a system that also does them harm, and that lack of acknowledgement or awareness really bothers me. But I guess they don't really care, because for them, being able to change their bodies is how they flex their privilege and separate themselves from the commoners. I don't really know what to make of them in the end. They're so frustrating and have gotten so much criticism and valid pushback and have been ignored pretty widely, but still make headlines, still grace the covers of fashion magazines, and I just don't get it. Most people seem to either dislike them or are totally ambivalent, and it's done nothing to hurt their careers or their bank accounts. In the end, after making this video, I have to admit I've become even more of a hater than just not giving a shit, but I don't know if getting angry about them or continuing to call them out is really worth anyone's time or energy anymore. I want to say that we should never give up on trying to raise awareness on how terrible they and their businesses are, but at the same time that hasn't really worked, so I don't know what to do. It all just seems like a hopeless situation at this point. They'll stay rich, we'll stay poor, and that's just how it'll be, I guess, till the end times. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I definitely struggled with this script and it went through a lot of revisions, because honestly, whenever I think about the Kardashians, it's just a mindfuck that I can't wrap my head completely around. But I thought it was important to talk about, especially after they've debuted their new looks and thus have been in the press more than ever. So before I end this video, I do want to say that I think Kim raising awareness about how terrible mass incarceration and prisons are is a good thing. She's specifically using her platform to help get people off of death row. However, I do still think we can critique her and her family and call them out for when they're being disingenuous, because if celebrities are really people too, we should be able to talk about all sides of them. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.